When my daughter Emily looked me dead in the eye and called me a pathetic, glorified babysitter in front of our entire family, something inside me went ice cold. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled, walked to my car, and by Monday morning I'd already frozen every account, hired a private investigator, and discovered they'd stolen $53,800 from me. What happened next? Well, let's just say karma has a PhD in poetic justice. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that perfect Sunday afternoon when I still believed my family loved me. The smell of charcoal and lighter fluid hung in the warm September air as I adjusted the grill temperature. Lorraine was humming, actually humming, while she arranged her famous potato salad in her grandmother's ceramic bowl. You know that feeling when everything seems right with the world? That was me, flipping burgers in my backyard at 58 years old, thinking I was the luckiest man alive. Dad, this smells incredible, Emily laughed, wrapping her arms around me from behind. Her voice carried that same warmth it had when she was 8 years old, begging me to let her flip the burgers herself. Remember when you taught me to grill? I was so short I needed that blue step stool from the kitchen. And you insisted on wearing my oversized apron? I chuckled, feeling that familiar swell of pride. The thing dragged on the ground behind you like a wedding dress. Victor was across the yard, setting up the badminton net with the precise movements of someone who approached everything like an engineering problem. Mr. Harlan, he called over, Emily mentioned you're thinking about early retirement. Any idea what you'd like to do next? I transferred the first batch of burgers to the platter, steam rising between us. Maybe some writing. I've always had stories bouncing around in my head. 30 years of teaching teenagers gives you plenty of material, trust me. Lorraine appeared at my shoulder with an ice-cold Labatt Blue, condensation dripping down the bottle. Here's to my hard-working husband, she said, planting a kiss on my cheek that tasted like sunscreen and happiness. Always taking care of everyone. Emily raised her wine glass, the late afternoon sun turning the white wine golden. To Dad, our family's safety net. I honestly don't know how Victor and I would have survived graduate school without you. Perfect. That's the word that kept echoing in my mind as we gathered around our weathered picnic table. 3 generations sharing stories about Emily's childhood dance recitals, Victor's latest promotion at the engineering firm, and our half-formed plans for a family trip to Niagara Falls next spring. I found myself staring at Emily's face, marveling at how she'd grown from that gap-toothed little girl into this confident, successful woman. 31 years old, master's degree, good job, married to a decent man who treated her well. This was what every father dreams of, right? This moment when you realize all the sacrifice was worth it. But then Lorraine's phone buzzed against the wooden table. She glanced at the screen and her lips curved into a smile I'd never seen before. Sharp around the edges, secretive. She leaned over to show Emily whatever was on that screen, and suddenly both women were giggling like teenagers sharing gossip in a school hallway. What's so funny? I asked, genuinely curious, still wearing that stupid grin of a man who thought he belonged in their inner circle. The giggling stopped. Emily looked at her mother, then at me, and I watched something shift behind her eyes, like watching a mask slide into place. Oh, just something about your job, Dad. Her voice had changed, colder, clinical. Mom was texting about how amusing it is that you still think teaching high school makes you some kind of intellectual when you're really just a glorified babysitter. The words hit me like stepping barefoot on broken glass. My hand tightened around the beer bottle until I could feel the ridges of the label pressing into my palm. Have you ever had one of those moments where sound gets weird? Where everything goes slightly muffled like you're underwater? That's what happened when my own daughter looked me in the eye and continued talking. I mean, seriously, Dad, your salary is embarrassing. She took a sip of wine, casual as discussing the weather. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is when Victor's friends ask what my father does for a living? High school teacher. God, it sounds so small. Victor was suddenly fascinated by his potato salad, fork scraping against the plate. Lorraine was studying her fingernails like they held the secrets of the universe. Only Emily met my gaze, and what I saw there made my stomach drop through the deck boards. Contempt. Pure, undiluted contempt. And those pathetic gifts you give us for Christmas and birthdays? She was warming up now, finding her rhythm. Victor's parents spent more on dinner last Friday than you spent on my entire wedding gift. It's just sad. My ears started ringing. A high-pitched whine that seemed to come from inside my skull. The familiar sounds of our neighborhood. Kids playing in the Hendersons' yard, Mrs. Kumar's lawn mower sputtering to life. All faded to white noise. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady as a newborn colt's. The burger I'd been eating sat like concrete in my stomach. "I think I'll head inside," I said quietly. Nobody stopped me. Nobody followed. Nobody said a word. I walked through our kitchen. The same kitchen where I taught Emily to make Mickey Mouse pancakes when she was 6. Where Lorraine and I had planned our future over countless cups of coffee. And everything looked different. Smaller. Like I was seeing it through the wrong end of a telescope. The refrigerator was still covered with Emily's childhood artwork. Faded now and curling at the edges. Her school photos from kindergarten through high school. Each year showing a little more of the woman who just crushed my heart in our backyard. That gap-toothed smile in the second-grade picture seemed to be mocking me now. You want to know what real betrayal feels like? It's not the hot flash of anger you'd expect. It's cold. Ice-cold realization creeping through your veins like poison, numbing everything it touches. It's standing in your own kitchen, surrounded by 30 years of memories, and suddenly understanding that the people you die for see you as nothing more than a walking ATM machine. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, each step feeling like I was walking underwater. In my desk drawer, beneath a stack of unpaid bills and old birthday cards, was an envelope I'd been meaning to file away. The receipt for the $1,200 I'd transferred to Emily's student loan account just 3 days ago. $1,200. Every month. For 3 years and 2 months. Let me ask you something. Have you ever done the math on your own sacrifices? Really sat down and calculated what love costs in actual dollars and cents? I had, many times. But somehow, seeing those numbers lined up in black and white, adding them up one more time, felt like getting punched in the gut by reality itself. $46,800. From a teacher's salary of $42,000 a year, take-home pay of $3,200 a month after taxes, insurance, and my pension contribution. But that wasn't the whole story, was it? I pulled out another folder, the one I'd labeled medical in my careful teacher's handwriting. Emily's emergency appendectomy 2 years ago. Insurance covered most of it, but not the $3,400 balance. I'd put it on our credit card and spent 8 months paying it off, $37 at a time from my lunch money. 8 months of peanut butter sandwiches so my daughter wouldn't start her marriage in debt. Wait, there's more. The $800 for plane tickets when Victor's grandmother died. The $2,200 for their security deposit when they decided their first apartment wasn't nice enough. The $600 for Emily's professional wardrobe when she started her new job. The $1,500 when their car broke down and they needed repairs immediately. You know what I was doing while I was playing financial fairy godfather? Driving a 15-year-old Honda with 200,000 miles on it because I couldn't afford car payments. Buying generic brand everything at the grocery store because name brands were a luxury I couldn't justify. Telling Lorraine we couldn't afford that trip to Italy she'd been dreaming about since our honeymoon. But here's the part that really gets me. The part that makes my hands shake even now as I tell you this story. I'd sold my father's car. A 1967 Mustang Fastback, cherry red with white racing stripes. My father had spent every weekend for 3 years restoring that car in our garage, teaching me about engines and life while we worked. When he died, he left it to me with a note that said, "Pass this down to Emily someday. Some things are worth preserving." I sold it for $18,000 to pay for Emily's graduate school application fees and moving expenses. Education is more important than sentiment. I told myself as I signed the title over to a 20-something kid who probably just wanted it for weekend racing. My father's legacy, gone. For a daughter who thought my life's work was embarrassing. Are you starting to see the picture? Because I was. Finally. $53,800 total. More than I made in an entire year, handed over freely because I believed in family. Because I thought love meant sacrifice. Because I was stupid enough to think my daughter respected me for it. I wasn't crying. Funny thing about real betrayal, it doesn't make you cry. It makes you cold. Clinical. It makes you start thinking like an accountant instead of a father. I sat in my home office that night, not sleeping, just calculating. The desk lamp cast a small yellow circle over 3 years and 2 months of bank statements. Every transfer to Emily's account highlighted in yellow marker. Every medical payment circled in red. Every receipt for generic groceries instead of the good stuff filed away in a folder marked sacrifices nobody noticed. At exactly 6 a.m., while Lorraine snored softly in our bed and the rest of the world was still asleep, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to Marcus Rodriguez. Remember that name because Marcus is important to this story. 15 years ago, Marcus had been one of my students. A kid from the East Side who everyone said would never amount to anything. Barely passing grades, trouble at home, the kind of teenager other teachers wrote off before Christmas break. But I saw something in his essays about Gatsby and the American dream. Raw intelligence buried under layers of anger and circumstance. Mr. Harlan? His voice was deeper now, confident. Holy shit, sorry, sir. I can't believe you're calling me. How did you get my number? The internet is a wonderful thing, Marcus. I saw your private investigation firm got a write-up in the Buffalo News last month. Congratulations. You kept track of me all these years? I keep track of all my students, especially the ones who prove everyone wrong. Listen, I need your help with something. Something personal. The second call was to Rebecca Chin, the attorney who'd handled my father's estate. She'd gone to school with Lorraine back in the day, so she knew our family situation. James, it's been too long. How are Lorraine and Emily? That's actually why I'm calling, Rebecca. I need to discuss some financial irregularities. The third call was to my bank. I need to make some immediate changes to my accounts. By 7 a.m., I was showered, dressed, and backing out of my driveway to meet Marcus at a coffee shop on Elmwood Avenue. Lorraine was still sleeping off her hangover from our perfect family barbecue. Emily and Victor had gone back to their apartment the night before, probably laughing about the crazy old man who thought he deserved respect for his pathetic little life. They had no idea what was coming. Marcus looked exactly like I'd expected, the same focused intensity that had helped him write brilliant essays about justice and betrayal, now channeled into exposing other people's lies for a living. He'd grown up well. Suit that actually fit, handshake that meant business, eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, he said, sliding a small digital recorder across the table between our coffee cups. So I did. Every detail, every dollar, every casual cruelty from the night before. I gave him account numbers, dates, amounts. I showed him the receipts and the bank statements and the medical bills. He listened without judgment, occasionally asking for clarification, taking notes in a leather portfolio that looked expensive enough to cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. Mr. Harlan, he said finally, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Do you suspect your wife and daughter have been dishonest about where your money has been going? I looked at this young man I'd once helped save from a life of dead-end jobs and wasted potential. Marcus, I don't suspect anything anymore. I want to know everything. And I want proof I can take to court if necessary. His smile reminded me exactly why I'd spent extra time helping him with his college application essays. Give me 1 week. Rebecca's law office was a converted Victorian house on Delaware Avenue, all dark wood and serious-looking law books. She spread my financial documents across her mahogany desk like a pathologist examining evidence of a crime. James, legally speaking, you've been incredibly generous. You have no obligation to continue these payments. She put on her reading glasses and studied the bank statements more closely. But I'm curious about something. These automatic transfers to Emily's student loans, they've been going to an account in both her name and your wife's name. Did you authorize Lorraine as a cosigner? I felt something cold settle in my stomach. No. I thought Emily was handling her own accounts. And this medical payment from last year, $3,400, it went to a completely different account. One that's registered solely in Lorraine's name. Rebecca looked up at me over her glasses. James, has your wife been managing Emily's financial arrangements without your knowledge? The room tilted slightly. I assumed Emily was handling everything herself. Let me make some calls, Rebecca said quietly. I think we need to dig deeper. The next 4 days crawled by like months. I went to work, taught my 5 classes of sophomore English, graded essays, helped students with their college applications. Normal life continuing while my world cracked apart behind the scenes. On Thursday morning, Marcus called. Mr. Harlan, can you meet me for lunch? I have your report. 23 pages. That's how thick the folder was that Marcus slid across the table at the little Italian place on Hurdle Avenue. 23 pages of bank records, credit card statements, and photographs that documented the systematic theft of my life savings. The good news, Marcus said, is that we have everything documented. The bad news is that it's worse than you thought. My hands were shaking as I opened the folder. The first page was a summary sheet with numbers that made my vision blur around the edges. The $1,200 I'd been sending every month? It had gone to Emily's student loans for exactly 7 months. After that, Lorraine had been transferring the money to a separate account and using it for what the report called discretionary personal expenses. Emily's actual loan payments had been coming from Victor's salary, while my money funded something else entirely. I flipped through page after page of evidence. Credit card statements showing purchases at expensive boutiques, spa treatments, weekend getaways with Lorraine's book club friends. The medical bills I'd paid for Emily's appendectomy? Her insurance had covered everything except a $340 copayment. The remaining $30–60 had paid for Lorraine's cosmetic dental work. There were photographs. Lorraine at Morton's Steakhouse with her girlfriends, showing off a designer purse that cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. Emily and Victor at some tropical resort, cocktails in hand, looking tan and relaxed. A resort that charged $400 per night for 8 days. They told me Victor's Christmas bonus paid for that vacation, I said quietly. According to the resort's records, it was paid for with a credit card linked to the account where your money was being deposited, Marcus replied. There's more. He showed me screenshots of text messages between Lorraine and Emily from the night of the barbecue. Timestamps showed they'd been sent while I was upstairs, probably while I was staring at those receipts and trying to understand how my life had become such a lie. Can't believe the old man actually looked hurt-faced with tears of joy. I know, right? So dramatic. He'll get over it like always. Think we can milk the guilt trip for a few more thousand? I saw this purse at Nordstrom. Definitely. Just give him a few days to sulk and then play the loving daughter card. Works every time. I closed the folder and sat there for a long moment, watching normal people eat their lunch and go about their normal lives. A young couple at the next table was arguing about their budget, trying to figure out how to afford a vacation. An elderly man was counting exact change for his coffee, probably on a fixed income. People who trusted each other. People who didn't steal from their own families. Marcus, I said finally, what would you do? He leaned back in his chair, and for a moment I saw the teenager he'd once been, angry, betrayed by the adults who were supposed to protect him. Mr. Harlan, you saved my life when you believed in me. You spent your own time and money helping me get into college when everyone else said I was hopeless. You gave me a chance to become someone better. He paused, choosing his words carefully. If someone stole from you, they stole from every student you ever helped, every life you ever changed. They stole from everyone who benefited from your kindness. His voice was quiet but fierce. I'd make sure they understood exactly what they'd taken. On Friday morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Instead of teaching Romeo and Juliet to a room full of 15-year-olds, I drove to the bank and made the changes that would alter the trajectory of my family's life. By 9 a.m., all automatic transfers to any account with Emily's name had been permanently canceled. The joint account Lorraine and I had shared for 32 years, the one containing $23,000 of my retirement savings, was now solely in my name. Our shared credit card was canceled and replaced with one bearing only my signature. At 9:15, I changed the passwords on all our streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Spotify, all paid from my teacher's salary, all suddenly inaccessible to anyone but me. 9:30. Lorraine's gym membership, canceled. Her yoga classes, canceled. Her monthly spa package, canceled. 9:45. I walked into the Verizon store and suspended service on Lorraine's cell phone. The teenage sales associate looked uncomfortable as I explained that I was removing my wife from our family plan. Sir, are you sure about this? It seems kind of extreme. Son, I said, let me tell you something about extreme. Extreme is stealing $53,000 from someone who loves you and then laughing about it behind their back. He processed the suspension without another word. My phone started ringing at 6:47 p.m. James, what the hell is going on? My card was declined at Wegmans. My phone isn't working, and I can't log into Netflix. Lorraine's voice was tight with the kind of panic that comes from suddenly realizing your safety net has been yanked away. I've made some changes to our financial arrangements, I said calmly, stirring pasta sauce and watching steam rise from the pot. We need to have a conversation. Changes? What kind of changes? You can't just cut me off from everything. I'm your wife. You're the woman who's been stealing my money and lying to my face about it. The wife I married died sometime in the last 3 years. I just didn't realize it until now. That's ridiculous. I never stole anything from you. Lorraine, I have bank statements. I have credit card records. I have photographs of you spending my money on luxury items while I ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. I have text messages of you and Emily laughing about manipulating me. Silence. Long, telling silence. James, you don't understand. I'll be staying at the Hampton Inn on Delaware Avenue tonight. Monday morning, we're going to sit down with lawyers and accountants and figure out exactly how much you owe me. After that, we'll see if our marriage is salvageable or if I need to file criminal charges for fraud. I hung up and turned off my phone. Saturday morning brought Emily. She showed up at the hotel lobby at 8 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Good. I wanted her to feel as off balance as I'd felt for the past week. Dad, what's going on? Mom is hysterical. She says you've lost your mind and frozen all the accounts. I gestured to the chair across from my table in the hotel restaurant. Sit down, Emily. We need to talk. I don't understand what this is about. Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. Your mother says a lot of things. Most of them are lies. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, Marcus's summary page with all the key numbers highlighted. Emily, I need you to answer one question, and I need you to answer it honestly. Where has the $1,200 I send every month actually been going? She glanced at the paper, and I watched the color drain from her face. Dad, what do you mean? I mean your student loan balance hasn't decreased by the amount I've been sending. I mean your mother has been using my money for personal expenses while you and I both believed it was going toward your education debt. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Dad, you don't understand. Mom was she was managing things differently. The money still helped us. How? How did it help you when it was paying for spa treatments and vacation packages, while I drove a car held together with duct tape and prayer? You're being dramatic. Am I? Emily, I sold my father's Mustang to pay for your graduate school expenses. That car was the only thing of value he left me, and I gave it up because I thought you needed help. Meanwhile, you were taking vacations that cost more than I make in 2 months and telling people my job was embarrassing. She started crying then. Not the real tears I'd seen when she was a child and genuinely hurt, but the calculated kind designed to make me feel guilty for hurting her feelings. Dad, I never meant for you to feel bad. When I said those things about your job, I was stressed about money, and I said things I didn't mean. Which things didn't you mean? That I'm a glorified babysitter? That my salary is embarrassing? That my gifts are pathetically cheap? Or was it the part where you and your mother texted each other about how easy it is to manipulate me? The crying stopped abruptly. You saw those texts? I saw everything, Emily. Bank records, credit card statements, photographs, text messages. 3 years of systematic theft documented in excruciating detail. She sat back in her chair, and for the first time since this conversation started, I saw a flicker of the intelligent young woman I'd raised. She was calculating, trying to figure out how much trouble she was in and what story might get her out of it. "Dad, please, we can work this out. Families go through rough patches. Families don't steal from each other and then mock each other behind their backs. We didn't steal. Emily." My voice cut through her protest like a blade. "What you and your mother did is called fraud. Misrepresenting the purpose of financial transfers for personal gain. It's a felony." Her face went white. "You wouldn't press charges against your own daughter. Try me." Monday morning, I returned home to collect my clothes and important documents. Lorraine was waiting in the kitchen with Emily and Victor, all three of them looking like they'd spent the weekend in crisis mode. "Good. James, sit down," Lorraine said in the voice she usually reserved for difficult customers at the department store where she'd worked before we got married. "We need to discuss this misunderstanding." I remained standing, my car keys still in my hand. "There's no misunderstanding. I know exactly where my money went, and it wasn't where you told me it was going." Emily stepped forward, using the same confident tone she'd used to eviscerate me at the barbecue. "Dad, you're making a huge mistake. Families help each other. We never asked you to become an accountant about every dollar. You asked me for help with student loans. I gave you money for student loans. You used it for vacation packages and shopping sprees. That's not family helping family, that's fraud." Victor finally spoke up. "Mr. Harlan, maybe we can work something out. I never wanted any family drama." I looked at him for the first time since this whole mess started. Really looked. Designer shirt, expensive watch, lease payments on a BMW that cost more than my annual salary. This man made $75,000 a year, but he'd stood by and watched his wife and mother-in-law systematically steal from a public school teacher. "Victor, you're not part of this family. You married into it, but you never chose to join it. Joining would have meant speaking up when you saw what was happening. Instead, you took a vacation paid for with stolen money and kept your mouth shut. Mr. Harlan, that's not fair." "Fair." I laughed, and the sound surprised even me. It was cold, bitter, nothing like the warm chuckles I'd shared with my students over the years. "Victor, do you know what fair looks like? Fair looks like a 58-year-old man who spent 30 years teaching other people's children, driving a 15-year-old car so he can help his daughter succeed. Fair looks like eating generic food and skipping vacations so your family can have opportunities you never had." I pulled a manila envelope from my briefcase and set it on the kitchen table where we'd eaten countless family dinners, where I'd helped Emily with her homework, where Lorraine and I had planned our future together. "This contains documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every lie, every stolen dollar. Your choice is simple. Pay back the $53,800 you stole from me, with interest, over the next 5 years, or explain to a judge why you thought it was acceptable to defraud a public school teacher out of his life savings." Lorraine started crying. Not real tears, but the performance kind she'd perfected over 32 years of marriage. "James, I'm your wife. We've been together since we were kids. You can't destroy our family over money. You destroyed our family when you decided I was too stupid to notice what you were doing with my money. I'm just refusing to pretend everything is fine when it's not." Emily was staring at the envelope like it contained a bomb. "Dad, you're talking about pressing criminal charges against your own family. I'm talking about holding thieves accountable for their crimes. The fact that you're related to me makes it worse, not better." Over the next 3 weeks, I learned things about my wife and daughter that I wish I could unlearn. Things that made me question every happy memory, every moment of pride, every time I'd bragged about my successful, loving family. Lorraine hired a lawyer who took one look at Marcus's evidence and advised her that fighting would be expensive and futile. She could plead ignorance, claim she thought she had permission to use the money, but the text messages between her and Emily made that defense laughable. Emily tried a different approach. She called my school, claiming I was having a mental health crisis and shouldn't be around students. She posted vague messages on Facebook about family difficulties and needing privacy during this challenging time. She painted herself as the victim of an unstable father who'd suddenly become controlling and abusive. My principal, Dr. Martinez, called me at home on a Wednesday evening. "James, I've known you for 12 years. Are you all right?" Emily seemed genuinely concerned about your mental state. I almost laughed. "Pat, my wife and daughter have been stealing money from me for 3 years. I discovered it, stopped it, and hired professionals to document the theft. If protecting myself from financial fraud makes me mentally unstable, then I suppose I am." There was a long pause. "Jesus, James. I'm sorry. Do you need time off to deal with this?" "I need normal. I need my classroom and my students and the routine that reminds me why I became a teacher in the first place. This mess will resolve itself, but I'm not going to let it destroy the one part of my life that still makes sense." It did resolve itself, but not the way any of us expected. The neighborhood found out on a Saturday in early November. The Hendersons next door were having their annual block party. Potluck dinner, backyard football, the kind of wholesome suburban gathering that made Elmwood Avenue feel like a real community instead of just a street where people happened to live. I hadn't planned to attend. I'd been keeping a low profile since moving back home, avoiding the neighbors who'd probably heard Lorraine's version of events through the suburban gossip network. But Marcus called that morning with information that changed my mind. "Mr. Harlan, there's something you need to know. Your wife has been telling people you're financially abusive. She's been showing edited bank statements that make it look like you have secret accounts she can't access." My grip tightened on the phone. "She's what?" "She's been playing the victim, claiming you've cut her off from money she's entitled to as your wife, making it seem like you're the one who's been dishonest." His voice carried the controlled anger of someone who'd seen too many lies in his line of work. "I have recordings of her at the coffee shop on Hurdle, talking to Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Kumar about your alleged controlling behavior." Controlling behavior. Financial abuse. The phrases made my hands shake with rage. I also found out Emily's been more active on social media. Posts about supporting family members through difficult situations and how mental health struggles can make people act out of character. That afternoon, I put on my best suit, the navy one I wore to parent conferences and school board meetings, and walked across the street to join 30 of my neighbors in the Hendersons' backyard. The conversation stopped when I appeared. 30 faces turned to look at the high school teacher who'd allegedly lost his mind and was emotionally abusing his wife and daughter. "Beautiful day for a party," I said pleasantly, helping myself to a beer from the cooler near the deck. Mrs. Patterson, who'd lived 3 houses down for 15 years and organized the neighborhood book club, approached me with the careful expression people use around potentially dangerous mental patients. "James, how are you holding up? Lorraine mentioned you've been under a lot of stress lately." "Did she? What exactly did she tell you?" "Just that you've been having some difficulties. Financial stress," she said. "Money problems that have been affecting your judgment." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the folder I'd prepared for exactly this moment. "You know, it's interesting that Lorraine mentioned financial stress. I've been meaning to clear up some misunderstandings about our family's money situation." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a bank statement showing 3 years of transfers to Emily's account, highlighted in yellow. Then the second document, Marcus's investigation summary showing where that money had actually gone. "For the past 3 years and 2 months, I've been sending my daughter $1,200 every month to help with her student loans," I announced to the group, my voice carrying the same authority I used when teaching Shakespeare to skeptical teenagers. Except the money wasn't going to student loans. It was being redirected to fun shopping sprees, spa treatments, and luxury vacations. The backyard went completely silent. Even the children stopped playing. Mrs. Kumar stepped closer, her expression shifting from concern to curiosity. "James, that's a very serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's documentation." I handed her the investigation report, open to the page showing photographs of receipts and credit card statements. 3 years and 2 months of systematic theft, totaling $53,800 from a teacher's salary of $42,000 a year. Mr. Henderson, our host, looked uncomfortable. "James, Maybe this isn't the right place for family business. Tom, my wife has been telling people I'm mentally unstable and financially abusive. She's been showing doctored bank statements to make herself look like a victim of domestic abuse. I think the people who've been hearing those lies deserve to know the truth. I began handing out copies of the real bank statements, the investigation summary, the documented proof of every lie Lorraine and Emily had told. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to explain away. Emily called my principal last month to report that I was having a mental health crisis and shouldn't be around students. I continued, my voice steady and calm. She posted on Facebook about needing privacy during her father's breakdown. The same Emily who's been living in a luxury apartment and taking tropical vacations funded by money she and her mother stole from me. Mrs. Patterson was studying the bank records with the focused intensity of someone solving a puzzle. James, these numbers. This is thousands and thousands of dollars. $53,800.23, to be precise. From a public school teacher who drives a 15-year-old car and buys generic groceries because he thought his family needed financial help. The silence stretched until Mrs. Kumar spoke again. Where are Lorraine and Emily now? Emily moved in with Victor's parents in Amherst after her mother-in-law found out about the fraud. Lorraine is staying with her sister in Rochester until our divorce is finalized. They left town right after their lawyer explained that continuing to live with me would make it harder to claim I was the one with financial problems. For the next hour, I answered questions and provided documentation. Every receipt, every bank transfer, every lie carefully cataloged and proven beyond doubt. By the time I left the block party, the entire neighborhood understood exactly what had happened in the Harlan household. Monday morning brought consequences. Emily's boss called her into a meeting after 3 co-workers mentioned seeing documentation of her fraud allegations on social media. Victor's mother, who had been sympathetic about Emily's difficult family situation, now demanded a full explanation for why the couple had been accepting money under false pretenses. Lorraine discovered that her book club friends were no longer available for lunch dates. Her hairdresser, who lived 2 streets over, canceled her standing appointment with a vague excuse about scheduling conflicts. Emily's Facebook posts about family privacy suddenly looked like attempts to hide criminal behavior. Her student loan company, alerted by my attorney, began investigating whether she had committed loan fraud by misrepresenting her financial assistance. By Christmas, the full consequences were clear. Emily's loans defaulted when Victor refused to continue making payments without the supplemental money from me. She was forced to take a second job waitressing at a chain restaurant in Elmwood Village, working nights and weekends to catch up on the payments. The luxury apartment was gone, replaced by a 1-bedroom rental that consumed most of Victor's salary. Lorraine's divorce attorney had advised her that fighting for alimony would be difficult given the evidence of fraud. She settled for a small share of our home's equity and moved into a studio apartment in North Buffalo. Her new job at a department store paid $12 per hour, less than half what she'd been spending monthly on her personal luxuries. Victor, to his credit, had distanced himself from the financial deception once the truth came out. But the marriage suffered. Emily's parents-in-law made it clear they disapproved of the fraud, and Victor began questioning what other truths his wife might have bent to make herself look better. As for me, I finished the school year and retired in June at age 59 with my full pension intact. The house felt enormous and quiet, but not lonely. For the first time in years, I could afford to buy name-brand groceries and take my car to a real mechanic instead of patching problems myself. I started writing that summer. Not the great American novel I'd once imagined, but a memoir about financial abuse within families and the courage required to demand honesty from people who claim to love you. The Teacher's Last Lesson, a memoir of betrayal and recovery, was published by a small regional press 18 months later. The book earned modest royalties, not enough to replace my pension, but enough to validate that my stories were worth telling. More importantly, it connected me with other people who'd experienced similar betrayals from family members. Support groups, speaking engagements at community centers, and eventually a part-time consulting role with a nonprofit that helped victims of financial fraud. Last month, I ran into Emily at the Wegmans on Alberta Drive. She was wearing the uniform from the restaurant where she'd been promoted to assistant manager, a position that required her to work 50 hours a week but finally paid enough to cover her loan payments. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the late shifts. The kind of tired that comes from learning expensive lessons about trust and consequences. "Dad," she said quietly. "How are you?" "I'm well, Emily. How are things?" "Harder than I expected." She hesitated. Then, "I read your book." I waited. I never thought about it from your perspective. How much you sacrificed. How much it must have hurt. And now I understand why you had to stop. Why you couldn't just let it go." She looked down at her hands. "Victor and I are getting divorced. Turns out when the money disappeared, so did a lot of other things." I felt no satisfaction in hearing this, just sadness for the bright, promising young woman who'd chosen lies over integrity and lost nearly everything as a result. "I'm sorry to hear that. Are you, though?" Her voice carried an edge of the old bitterness. "Isn't this exactly what you wanted when you humiliated us in front of the neighbors?" I studied her face. Still my daughter, but changed in ways that went deeper than the exhaustion and restaurant uniform. "Emily, I never wanted you to suffer. I wanted you to understand that actions have consequences and that love without honesty isn't really love at all." "Well, I understand now." She started to walk away, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I know what we did was wrong. I don't know how to fix it. Start by being honest about it. With yourself and everyone else. Stop making excuses and start making amends." She nodded slowly and continued toward the exit. I finished my grocery shopping, loading name-brand items into my cart without calculating the cost difference. At home, I prepared dinner for Marcus and his wife were coming over to discuss his own book project about ethical investigations. As I set the table, I thought about the lesson I'd tried to teach my students every year. That respect is earned through consistent actions, not demanded through blood relationships or emotional manipulation. Some students learned it quickly. Others took years to understand. And some, like Emily, had to lose nearly everything before the lesson finally took hold. But that's the thing about being a teacher. You plant the seeds and trust that eventually, when the conditions are right, they'll grow into something worth having. Even if it takes longer than you hope and costs more than you ever wanted to pay. If you liked this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions in the comments below. Have you ever experienced financial betrayal from family members? How did you handle it? Your stories help others who might be facing similar situations.